Hey everyone, Jordan here. We recently looked at the NZXT H5 Flow RGB, which had a little bit of a refresh for 2024. NZXT have now done the same thing with the H5 Flow RGB, and we have the 2024 edition. So let's get it open and take a look. So there we have the new H5 Flow RGB. It's going to come in two different colours, so black and white. You can also get it in a non-RGB if you want to save a little bit of money. That's going to be £89, which I think is fairly reasonable. This one though is going to be £109, and if I just pull the front panel off, which you're supposed to do at the front, but I'm going to do it from the bottom just because I haven't taken the top off yet. That just pops off with push pins. No filtration on the back of this one though, so just something you might want to bear in mind. Now this is one of the big changes for this case for the 2024 refresh. You now have one of the F360 fans in the front, so you've got 320mm fans to draw fresh air in over the two 140s and then the 120 that was in the bottom pointing up to the graphics card in the original. Now another thing to note is if you're going to get the non-RGB version of this case, it only comes with a single 120. So say you're going to spend another £20 on fans to fill it out, that's already the difference in cost between the standard and the RGB. So I just think this is a reason to go for the RGB in the first place. I don't know if it was a tactical decision to do it like that, but I think it just makes sense to get this one. And then you've got all those fans that are just on one header for RGB and one header for power as well, so it's much more convenient. If I bring the original one, you can just about see that 120mm fan that's in the bottom there. So I think a nice little change to have equal fans all the way along, especially as the one that was in the bottom of that case didn't really make too much difference for temperatures on the graphics card anyway. So going on to the top, we've got a little bit of a change for the I/O. So it usually went along this way. Now for the 2024, it goes along to the back of the case. We've got a power button that also has some illumination on it as well. There's a USB Type A, this is USB 3.2. We've got a Type C, which is USB 3.2, and then we have a headphone and a microphone combi jack. Undoing the thumb screw and taking the top panel off. Smaller panel than we had on the other one. This was a big old magnetic filter that ran pretty much the length, but this is a smaller one. We have got support for our top mounted radiator. You can do 240mm AO in this case. You cannot do a 280 unless you use low profile memory though, so something to bear in mind. A little bit of a shame I think as well. I would expect a case of this size to support a 280 in the roof, but you know, it is what it is. You can of course do a 360 in the front if you wanted to screw through those fans that are included and mount it in there, but yeah, only 240 in the roof. On the back of the case, we've got a pre-installed silent 120mm fan that will be included if you get the non-RGB variant as well. We've got our 7 expansion ports a bit further down. Power supply, you can support up to a 200mm power supply. This is the horizontal mounted though, so traditional style, unlike the vertical that we saw with the H7. Does make me wonder about the airflow getting into that power supply though, because if I turn this upside down, solid bottom on it, so not quite sure about that one. I'm guessing it's going to have to be drawn in from the side, or we have to mount it fan up, but then that will impede the fan support that we've got on top of the shroud inside, so we'll have to try and figure that one out and talk to you more about that in the conclusion. So no thumb screw on the glass like we saw on the original one, but that just pops off nice and easily. A 3mm piece of tempered glass there, slight tint on it as well. The white one I believe has no tint, so just something to bear in mind. So now into the belly of the case itself, support for EATX like the original. There's that pre-installed 120mm fan, the full F360 in the front there. I will show you the connections on the back, but it's a standard 5V addressable and also a 3-pin. The one you buy will be a 4-pin, but you can still control them with the motherboard PWM without any worries. So the other change for the refresh of this case is the additional support for some fans. So you can do a couple in the bottom here. You can do them one like that, and then we can put another one a little bit further along, or you could put it right up against it. Of course you can just use one singly if you'd rather, but there's some options too to put them nice and snug together, or with a little bit of separation. All the airflow will be drawn in from this perforated panel along the side here, so you can draw some fresh air in. I am still worried about the power supply getting choked though, but that's something we'll talk about, like I said, in the conclusion. Before we go around the back, let's just talk about the limitations and heights that we can support. So for your cooler, you can do a maximum of up to 175mm. And then for your graphics card, you can support a maximum of 410mm. Of course, if you're going to mount your radiator in the front, you will need to account for that. Most radiators are 30mm thick, so that gives you a total of 380 to play with, but still loads of room. I don't think there's any cars that big on the market anyway. So a couple of thumb screws to remove this panel. Nice big perforated area as well to bring in some fresh air for your fans or power supply. And then we have got some nice cable management options, some nice tie points as well, some zip tie areas. You've got an area down here for any hard drives that you might want to install. You can do one 3.5 inch and one 2.5 inch. We've got our blue connector, so that's the USB Type 3 for the Type A. We've got our USB Type C connector under that little cover. The front panel all in one block, love to see it. NZXT, I think, were one of the first to do that, and a good job as well. We've got our 3-pin there for the frame fan. There's also the RGB as well. You can either use one of their hubs or you can use the standard 5-volt addressable 3-pin. And then you've also got your HD audio. You've got the power for the rear fan there. That's just a 3-pin. That will do a maximum of 1350 RPM. Now, another little thing just to mention is that the F360 in the front does produce a little bit less CFM, so it's around 50, and then the standard fans are 60, but it can go higher in the maximum RPM range up to 1700. So you do have a little bit of a trade-off there, but like I saw in the H7, it did perform pretty well anyway, and of course we'll be testing that in the conclusion. So now I'm going to get my test rig put into it. There's the one that you actually see here on the right of the screen. I did test this previously because I know a lot of people would want to see the original to the new one to see what kind of figures it spits out. So I've already tested that, so now I'm going to transplant that into the new one, see what kind of performance we get, talk about my build experience, and then give you my overall thoughts. And on to the conclusion for the H5 Flow RGB 2024 refresh. Very easy to build in. There's a nice like cable management space in the back, so it's nice and easy to tuck all of your cables and things away. I've actually got the majority in the little cable holders and stuff rather than in with the power supply, which is good. I do recommend that you put your EPS connectors in first, as there's not a lot of room to do it after, even when using an AirTowel like I am, let alone trying to fit it in with a 55mm rad and fans. Not going to be a good time. The power supply is fan side up. I think it would have been nice to have some mesh underneath, so you do have the choice to be able to put it fan side down, especially if you add some fans on the shroud. Those are just going to be fighting against the power supply fans, so I think it would have been nice to have an option there at least. I do like the addition of the F360 single frame fan in the front. For an extra £20 from the non-RGB to the RGB, I'd just get this one. They do push a lot of air even when set to 1500 RPM for my testing. It's just a little bit of a thing that you can always get this one and turn off the RGB if you're not a fan of it, whereas I think you just get more for your money with this one over the non-RGB. All the other fans in the system are set to 1500 to 1600 RPM. We'll try and keep it in the middle to keep the test as consistent as possible with the 5800X3D and the U12A from Noctua. The rear fan was also set to full speed, as it only goes to a maximum of 1350 RPM. I saw a high temperature of a perfect 80 degrees. Taking off the ambient left me with a delta of 57.6. That puts it in second place for the coolest case that I've tested. It was just 0.3 degrees cooler than the last gen H5 Flow RGB, so nothing groundbreaking in terms of cooling potential, but it is nice to have a design that matches the H7 refresh. Now, I would like to see the 280 AIO support that I mentioned. That's one thing that I was quite surprised it didn't have. Also, the top IO might be lacking for some, but I think for the overall price of £109, considering it does have the F360 single frame fan in the front, which alone sells for about £55, I think it is a good asking price. I'm going to end the video here and keep it short and sweet, as I cover the main changes, as of course it is just a refresh, not a brand new case. Of course, if you have any other questions, then do leave them in the comments box below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. We'll leave the links for this in the description if you want to pick one up. Let me know if you'd like to see it used in a build as well, and what kind of spec you'd like me to use it in, if so. Thank you all for watching. Please get subscribed and ding the bell if you enjoyed the video. Leave a like as well, it does help me out massively, I do appreciate it. Of course, thanks to NZXT for sending this out for me to review, and I'll see you all in the next one.